Hi, and welcome to episode 36 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Sunday the 12th of June 2016. It's a nice sunny day out here in the central west of New South Wales in Australia, and it's lovely to have your company. I mentioned last week that I was thinking about getting some lights for the podcast, so I've managed to do that, but after a lot of playing around, I don't think I've got the optimal setup for them yet, so I might be looking a little bit yellow and jaundiced or something, but I think overall the light is definitely helping, so I will continue to play around with those over the coming week to try to get a better setup. I had some fantastic feedback about the podcast, so thank you to those who took the time to get in touch with me. I'm trying to do some improvements to the podcast, and they'll take a little bit of time to happen, but for instance, my background at the moment, I've just plonked a shawl up there, but I will try to get a more permanent setup here, and I'll try to improve how I create this podcast so that it's fun and informative for you. We have a Ravelry group and we're running a local knit along at the moment, so looking at using local to you fibres, yarns and patterns. So if you're interested, then please pop by the Ravelry group and have a look. There are 6 finished entries so far, with a hat, a pullover and a few shawls, so please check them out if you're interested in looking at beautiful knitwear. The knit along or craft along is running until the 9th of July, so you've got some time, just under a month, to work on a project if you want to take part. I also want to say thank you to those who got in touch with me about the gobbledygook that I'm dealing with. The week was stressful, and thankfully I didn't have to go to Sydney, but I was this close. It looks like my gobbledygook will all disappear on Tuesday, but we'll see. 90% certain. 90%. Yeah, it'll be fine. And then I can relax, and I'll be in a much happier headspace. But thank you to those of you who got in touch. So, on with the show. This week there's no spinning, but there is some knitting with hand spun, and there's a finished object and some works in progress. So, I have a finished object which I didn't actually expect to have, but I decided to get a wriggle on with my block socks. So they look like this. So these are knit for the Miss Click Clack tricolour block sock knit along, and Miss Click Clack is a dyer of amazing yarns, and the idea behind the knit along is to use 3 different colours of her yarns to knit some socks. There are amazing socks in the knit along in the finished objects thread, just amazing uses of 3 colours. So not only are the colours beautiful, but also just the construction of the socks is very creative and fun. So these are my entry. I haven't had a chance to take a photo of them yet because I washed them yesterday and they're still just a touch damp, so that just shows you how cold it is out here at the moment. I have a sock with an intarsia in the round cable that I knit. So this is a pattern that I made up, and I'm thinking about writing it up, but I think I just need to do a little bit of tweaking to my technique. I have a fish lips kiss heel on there. I did them toe up. I've got a twisted rib up the top, and yeah, not too sure what else to say with these. They use 66 grams of yarn, and I used a mini set from Miss Click Clack, and her minis are incredibly generous because obviously I've managed to get 2 socks out of them. So I think her mini sets generally go over 100 grams with 3 colours or something like that, so recommend checking out the shop, although I think she's on holiday at the moment. so she might not have anything up there, but I'm sure she will soon. I also realised as I was working on these that because I have put the cable on opposite sides of the sock, so that they're on the outside of the foot, and because I've put the twisting going opposite on the cable, I can enter these in the Yonder Woman opposites knit along. So these will be going up there as well, and I might see if I can find a couple more knit alongs to enter into. I've never won a knit along, but I do find them encouraging to get projects finished, and also to inspire and encourage ideas. But they're done. I have also been working on a few different projects, and the first of those is my breathing space pullover. So this is a paid for pattern by Vera Välimäki, a Finnish knitwear designer, but the pattern is in English, and it's from the Interpretations 3 pattern collection that she did with Johi Locatelli. I haven't got as much done on this as I expected. I was hoping to get one sleeve finished, but I think the socks sort of took my attention away. So this is where I'm up to with a sleeve. So it's getting there. I think I've got a few more stripes to do, and then I switch over to the grey, and it's a 3/4 length sleeve, so it's almost there. And then of course a second sleeve. I had the thing happen again where I started the sleeve on double pointed needles or DPNs, and then I remembered that I don't like knitting sleeves on double pointed needles because I like them if the sleeves aren't attached, but because the sleeves are actually attached and then you knit along, the needles tend to poke into the body, and then you've got to be swinging the whole body around as you knit. So I probably should have done it magic loop, but I'd already picked up the stitches and I didn't want to spend more time fiddling around with it. So I think that with the way that I knit, it will become neat. It will be neater on the double pointed needles. I won't have the ladders that I might get if I was using magic loop, in which case I'd get a ladder on the top and the bottom, and I think this will work better, but we'll see. I've also got some detachable markers here. I use them to let me know where I've done the decreases so that I can match them on the second sleeve. Now, I'm not too big a fan of these particular detachable markers. I find that they're a little bit too tight, so that when you try to take them back out of a stitch, you've got to really hold on to your fabric and squish the little clip so that it doesn't pull the stitch completely out of place. But they are lightweight, so I find that they work well on a larger piece of fabric rather than weighing down the stitches as you knit. So that is that one. So also on my needles is my Maluka shawl, which I'm knitting from Adagio Mill's 4-ply alpaca yarn. It's a local to me mill, and I also picked up some of this yarn for the local knit along finished objects prize winner. So I am using a grey and a brown, and this is currently set up on a circular needle, so it's a little bit hard to show, but I finished the lace section, if I can figure out where it actually goes. So there's a lot of lace, and it looks like that. There's my little robot guy. He was always just reminding me which one was the front and which one was the back, in case I was feeling lazy and didn't want to stare at my stitches to figure it out. But it will be easier to see this lace pattern once it's actually blocked. So I had a little panic as I was knitting along on the grey, realising that I hadn't actually been weighing my yarn to see how much yarn went into a repeat. but I then realised that I could just weigh what I had left of the yarn ball, take that away from what the yarn ball had been to begin with, count the number of repeats, do some division, and I figured out how much yarn I needed for a repeat. So I managed to get almost to the end, which is exactly what I wanted, so that I could do one row of knitting to pick up all the stitches off the edge. And I'd followed the chart exactly as it's written, and it's a free pattern, and I had no problems whatsoever. This is completely in a tangle. But yeah, so what happened then is that I changed over to the brown yarn, and I knit all the way along to the center, and the pattern has a particular way of doing this sort of filling in the body, because you're doing the edging first and then filling in the body. I'd read some comments about people who hadn't been happy with the width of the shawl, so I decided to do some adjustments to how I was going to do that. And I sort of knit for a while, for maybe 3 or 4 rows, wasn't happy, ripped back, tried it again, ripped back, put in a lifeline, did another version, and then I was happy. So the lifeline didn't actually come into play, because by that stage I'd sort of figured it out. So I'm just doing some short rows at a slightly less frequent rate than what the pattern calls for, and I'm not doing the decreases that it calls for. So I'm thinking that this is going to result in a shallower but wider shawl. I'm thinking that I might now at this point adjust the frequency of my short rows, just to give it a little bit more depth, because I'm worried that otherwise I'm going to end up with a large edge and too shallow a body. But it's experimenting, it's fun, and I love this yarn. So it's, yeah, I said the other week that it feels like it's really soft, but it has some body to it as well. So love it. And this is going to be nice and warm for me as the temperatures cool down, and it's also my favourite browns and greys, so it will work well with whatever I'm wearing. Not that I'm too much of a stylish sort of person, but I know what I like. So that has been going on, and I realised I can't remember if I told you the names of the colours that I'm using, because at first I wasn't sure what they were, and then when I was playing around with the yarn balls I realised that the names are actually on the inside of, so wow, that colour's really blowing out. I'll play around with these lights soon. So Adagio Mills, but if you can see on the inside there's the name Brahms, and the batch number is 20160405, which to me sounds like 2016 April the 5th. And the other one is Autumn Rose Grey. That way. Autumn Rose Grey, batch number 2016 April 2, so 0402. So I think that's the spinning date, perhaps. And I thought that was a really nice little touch from them, because it kind of makes you realise that the yarn was born on a particular day. So interesting. I could be wrong. Maybe it is just a random number, but it seems to me to be a date. I've also, I guess because I finished up my block socks, I cast on a new sock last night. I had asked during the week on Instagram about knitting with hand spun to knit some socks, and whether it made a difference knitting them toe up or cuff down. People didn't seem to have any sort of particular reason to go either way, but there was a suggestion to make sure that I knit the heel with a yarn with nylon in it. So I'll see what I decide to do. I've knit one pair of hand spun socks, and it was just pure merino, and I just wear them sort of when I'm not planning to put my feet into boots and all that kind of stuff, and they're nice and soft and warm. So this is what I've done so far. So this is the hand spun that I was showing last week. It was spun from a superwash merino nylon blend from Fondant Fibre in the Deep and Meaningful colourway. So this is the ball of yarn, and you can see that there's some purples and blues and yellows and greens in there predominantly. And I'm not sure if I'm using the ball of yarn which has the one ply, which I wasn't sort of managing the colour with much to begin with, but there's a small amount of striping going on. There's some yellows there, sort of a more purple section. There's a sort of a yellowy purple section, and then it's just starting off into a blue section. They are very similar colours, and I think that I possibly muddied them up a bit while I was spinning. So I've been reading a little bit more about colour management, and I think that I've got a better sense of what I should be doing in order to sort of keep the colours separated. And I think a chain ply or Navajo ply would definitely make stripes out of this yarn, but because I plied two different bobbins together, it's just creating a, I don't know, just a hand spun effect. But I think as I go along, I think it will become more stripy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens from there. It definitely does say Deep and Meaningful to me, with it's not grey, but it's a deeper tone, I guess, of the colours. I am knitting these on my Knit Pro Zings that a kind podcast viewer sent me in a swap, and I started off with Judy's Magic Cast On with I think 24 stitches, increasing every second row on the ends, and then I've got 60 stitches that I'm now knitting along. And it is definitely, knitting with hand spun is always fun, but just seeing the colours and not being sure exactly what to expect to pop out of the yarn ball is kind of exciting. That I didn't want to go to bed last night because I was just wanting to knit on this. I'm not sure if I have overspun the yarn a little bit for this purpose. It perhaps could have been a little bit less spun or less plied to create a slightly softer yarn, but I think once it actually washes up, it will be fine. And I think for socks anyway, it's probably a good idea that it had just a little bit of extra spinning applied to it, but I think it looks good. So I'm going to be working on the foot, and then I'm going to get to the heel, and I haven't knit too many toe-up socks, so I'd be interested to know if you have any suggestions for heels other than the Fish Lips Kiss heel. I think that I'd like to use one with a gusset, just to provide a little bit more room. So if you have any suggestions, please pop by the Ravelry group and put a comment in the thread, or send me a message on Instagram, and I'd love to hear about some suggestions for heels. I've done a little bit of searching, but haven't settled on anything in particular, so it would be good to know if you've got suggestions. And that's it for my knitting. I have been wearing my Pop Fizzle beanie around the house and the yard recently. So that was my brioche beanie that I knit, was it early this year? And I have to admit it's a little bit loud for wanting to wear it anywhere else. So I've only been wearing it around the house, but I have been wearing my sock head hat when I've been going out, and I'm sort of I think that I need a slightly chunkier beanie for when I go out rather than just my sock head beanie. So I'm on the lookout for some of those patterns, and I need to go through my stash and see what I've got. And I think, I've also got a cousin who is going to be having a baby in around October, so I need to come up with something for a baby girl. It's going to be, she's in the Arctic Circle, so in Lapland in Finland, and I think if I go for a 6-month size, then I can do something chunky. It should sort of fit through a good chunk of the winter up there. So if you have any suggestions for baby patterns, I'm thinking of some kind of cardigan-y, coaty kind of thing. Not necessarily chunky to wear outdoors, but sort of around the house, kind of as tiny newborn babies like to strut around the house in beautiful knitwear, but you know what I mean. So yeah, any suggestions would be wonderful. I've mentioned the local knit along a couple of times now, and I've been thinking that it will finish on the 9th of July, and then in August is the 1-year podiversary of this podcast. So when I started the podcast, I had a first time knit along, which was to encourage people to try things for the first time, whether it was a particular type of fibre or yarn, a technique, or a new type of knitted object or what have you. So I'm wondering whether we should do another first time knit along. I think that there's some other podcasts who do something like that anyway, but if you have other suggestions, anything else that you think would be a good idea for a knit along, then please let me know. So on to general chatter. If you're not interested, then thank you for watching. But yeah, so I mentioned that I had ordered some new lights. I had my first instance of buying something on eBay and then being told, oh, we don't have it in stock, and then seeing they had bumped up the price significantly, and they admitted they didn't have it in stock. So I reported them, but I managed to get my money back and found another supplier. So the lights turned up on Friday, and I need to play around with them and think about the fact that it's now late afternoon or mid-afternoon and the sun's going down on one side, which is actually causing a lot of glare over here. But I will play with them. I'll find a more permanent spot for recording, and I'm just happy that I've got the lights now. It will make a huge difference once I learn how to use them. I have been trying to take some photographs of the crimson rosellas, that the birds that I've been feeding. I put a different lens onto my digital SLR camera, but because of the rain that we've been having, I haven't had a chance to take the tripod out there, because it's kind of necessary when you're trying to take photos at a distance, especially when it's hazy and what have you. So I'll try to get some photos, but I'll check the ones that I did take and see if any of them are any good. And they were without the tripod, so chances are they're blurry, but I'll see, and I might be able to pop them in so that you can see the beauty of the red birds up close, because I know that quite a few of you have been interested in seeing them. And there hasn't been too much else going on. I haven't been doing any exploring, but I have been looking into what sort of fibre festivals or wool festivals there might be in the area, and it looks like I've missed quite a few, and the next ones don't happen until late spring. So they seem to happen from late spring to early autumn, which seems a little bit funny, because I would think that you should be having them in the middle of winter when everyone's cold and wanting to knit and wanting to buy warm, fluffy things. So I'll keep looking, and I might be able to find something, but I think that I will possibly go to Young, which is about, I think it's an hour and a half drive away, and that seems to be the nearest proper yarn shop to me. And I think, yeah, if everything goes okay on Tuesday, then I think that I will give myself a day off and do that drive later in this week, as long as the weather's alright and it's not foggy and not rainy and all that. And it would be nice to go and explore what is in that yarn shop and also the town in general, because I've never been there to my knowledge. I think that's it. Nothing too exciting going on. Haven't had a chance to do too many wanders around the village because the weather has been just horrible. And when it hasn't been horrible, I've just been recovering from the fact that it's been horrible. So I think we have a good stretch of sunshine now, and I don't mind winter when the sun's shining, and I can live with occasional rainy days, and so I'm hoping that overall this winter is a fairly dry one, with the occasional spot of rain, because I do like the rain. It's just not when it's freezing cold. Anyway, enough weather, enough rain chatter. I hope that you're well. I hope that you are making all sorts of amazing things and having fun with your crafts. And I'll see you soon.